During a previous session at this COP29, Somalia's Deputy Prime Minister criticized the international community's tendency to react to crises rather than preventing them. So how can we shift the paradigm to encourage prevention and minimize the need for humanitarian intervention?
That's a very good point. We obviously need to act early and in advance of shocks to minimize the impacts. That's something that OCHA, my office, has been working on over the past few years, scaling something called anticipatory action or forecast-based finance. That's where you release funding or money directly to communities and non-governmental organizations or UN agencies working in the country based on a forecast. So it might be a forecast for drought or floods or storms. And ideally the funding reaches the people before the actual climate shock so they can take action to help protect their lives, livelihoods, families, and nature around them. 2024
has been a devastating year for disaster risk reduction in regions like the northeast of Nigeria, specifically in Maiduguri, and also in southern Chad, in Bongor, far north Cameroon, and regions like Mayo-Danai, and parts of Mali and Burkina Faso. Floods have tragically claimed the lives of hundreds of people in the region. What measures have been implemented to support vulnerable populations and to prevent future disasters?
Absolutely. And we know that this year floods have displaced or affected over 7 million people in 16 countries across West and Central Africa. And in particular, Niger, Nigeria, Chad, and DRC have been devastated. We know that over 600,000 houses have been destroyed, 1 million people displaced, over 1,000 people have lost their lives. So clearly we need to take action. And the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has been helping coordinate the humanitarian response, working with governments. So we have released over $38 million for 6 countries to help them facilitate a response to the flood. But clearly, as mentioned, the countries, I'd have to check that. I believe it's the ones that are the most devastated. So Nigeria, Niger, Chad. And in particular, to give you an example of what we're doing, we actually also have been piloting anticipatory action, so releasing money ahead of floods. And in Chad, at the end of September, before the floods actually hit, we released over $5 million so that 200,000 people around the capital city could take action to prepare for the floods. And that includes things such as providing access to water, clean water and food, dignity kits so that people can have materials that are needed when the floods were coming. And that's something that's it's the first time actually that anticipatory action for floods has been taken in Africa, and we're excited that we were able to hopefully help communities minimize the shocks.
It's good to give the funding, but the money reaches the government at a higher level. On the grassroots, do you have a monitoring system to be rest assured that the money reaches the local population?
Yes, now the humanitarian community usually works through UN agencies and non-governmental organizations on the ground. So for example, in 2022, in response to floods in South Sudan, we also released funding in advance of the rainy season. And there, not only was the money used by UN agencies to make sure that the roads were not flooded and that food could still get through the flooded areas, but actually agencies released money directly to over 1,000 households that were led by women so that they could take action to help strengthen their shelter and help prevent leaking and rainwater from getting in. So there are cases where we actually use cash transfers direct to community members, and certainly the humanitarian community has been leading the increasing use of cash transfer in emergency situations.
You recently mentioned that the UN Central Emergency Response Fund allocated over $38 million. This is clearly insufficient. So we are here at COP29 and we are moving towards the end of the event. Is there any reason to hope for a better future in terms of funding?
Yes, I mean, obviously, so first of all, the allocation this year wasn't unfortunately billions, it was just millions, $38 million. And now why is that? That's partly because the UN humanitarian system and the global humanitarian system itself is underfunded. But we also know that there are huge gaps in climate finance, specifically for adaptation and also for adaptation in fragile countries. Something like a third of adaptation funding reaches countries that are considered fragile or in conflict, and we need to change that. So we're looking for governments here at COP29 to take action and help both give more financing, but more financing for adaptation, more financing for fragile states through the new collective quantified goal. Today, we just had the release of the first draft text, and we are very excited that one of the paragraphs actually mentions fragile and conflict-affected states and the need to help overcome capacity constraints in accessing finance. So some of the needs of countries in Africa are being recognized right now in the text. Now, whether or not it survives the next 24 hours, we'll see, but hopefully with the pressure of governments and non-governmental organizations who are interested in this area, we'll be able to ensure that some of those really important clauses are included in the final text.
Thank you.